This is the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom show, the Wake Up Call on WCOM LP, Chapel Hill and Carrboro, 103.5 on your FM lab, or live streaming at WCOMFM.org. You can also watch the show on the People's Channel after a week's delay on Thursday night at 10 p.m., Friday morning at 6 a.m., or Tuesday at noon. The show will also be available on our YouTube channel, Wolf Wake Up Call.
Friedman.
I'm Iris Schwintzer here with our host, Lori Hoyt, Emily O'Hare on the camera, well maybe not. Today our special guest is Steve Friedman.
Thanks, Iris. Okay, we're going to get serious now. We're getting started. And
This is awesome.
and we're here again on a Wednesday afternoon, and actually this is a particularly gorgeous one. I love the cooler weather. I feel much more like a human being, especially I feel like a drier human being, and that's really kind of nice, particularly because the studio does sometimes not have very good air conditioning. So we're delighted, particularly delighted to be here, and also we're delighted to have our guest, Steve Friedman.
Yes, thank you for having me.
And who's a friend of our Wilf sister Miriam Thompson, and he's going to be running for the Board of Aldermen in Carrboro, and so we're going to get to know him and find out more about him, and more about when elections are, and just start getting ourselves ready for particularly, I know there's a lot of excitement about 2020, but here we are, folks, and this is very important, 2019. And and this is something a lot of people may not realize, and it took me a while, that we have a lot more power with our municipal boards and aldermen and councils, and than we do with the national. So the more it's local, the more they're the ones who determine what our schools are like. Well, I won't even go into it. I'm going to let Steve go into that. So welcome, Steve.
Thank you so much for having me, Lori. I really appreciate it, and I think a lot of what you're saying is true. And I know we'll get into it, into a lot of topics. But if people can just, if you remember nothing else from today, I want you to remember to go out and vote.
Yeah.
Because your voting is your power. And there was actually, in today's Daily Tar Heel, there was a little article about that. Myself and the other candidates were at the First Baptist Church over on Roberson Street over the weekend, and we all had about a minute to talk, and I talked a little bit about what I wanted to do, but I really wanted to implore them that, the biggest power that any of us have is our ability to vote. It doesn't matter how much money you have, it doesn't matter what your status is, your vote counts just as much as everybody else's. And so if you want to be the change that you want to see, get out there and vote. Because if you don't vote, you can't complain.
No, and I think what, in a negative way, what shows how powerful the vote is how hard certain groups are trying to squelch the vote and to make it harder to vote and to do everything to keep people from voting. And I think that's a backhanded compliment, that they're afraid of more people getting out to vote, and particularly people that they think maybe won't vote for them. And this will be people who are not rich, who are not powerful. These are our regular folks. And that's the power that they're trying to squelch, because they have the money. But if we get out and vote, we have the people power.
You're absolutely right, and I assume you're not trying to make me angry, but that is, but that is one thing that just really just gets me, right?
Me
because
too. Me too.
I mean, however much we try, there'll always be money in politics, and right now, I mean, you see it at the national level, where there are people who are desperately trying to hang on to power, and they're using all their resources, and the resources are primarily money, to try to squelch the vote. Fortunately, a month or so ago here in North Carolina, they ruled that the gerrymandering that takes place here is illegal, and they're looking at redrawing those maps. and it will be, and there's obviously a lot of discussion going on about that. I saw the other day the Republicans were trying to do it with ping pong balls, which is not exactly the most strategic way to do it. But it'll be interesting to see what happens in our state once the gerrymandering goes away, and people are really represented by people who hold their same values and hold their same views. I think in North Carolina there's room for everybody, and I certainly respect people who skew more conservative, and they should have a voice, and it should be there, but it should be fair for all of us. And if our state is primarily blue, then our representatives should also have that as well. I'm looking forward to flipping the House in 2020 here in North Carolina, as well as flipping the Senate and the White House on a national level as well. I think here in at least here in Carrboro, we're very fortunate because we have some really qualified candidates who are running for office. And when I was watching the debate last night, and I think Tom Perez, the Democratic National Committee chair, said that there's 12 people on stage who would be better than the president that we have today, and I certainly believe that. I think that whoever is the alderman after the November election will be in great shape with all three of them. No matter who wins. And that's one of the difficult things about running a campaign here in Carrboro is you're really running against quality people. And I think everybody who's in this race today really cares about Carrboro. And the differences that we have are just minor distinctions. I think we all recognize, there's no climate change deniers who are running for office. We all recognize climate change as being the existential threat of our lifetime. It is one of the biggest things that we have to face as Americans. Trump pulling out of the climate Paris Accord was terrible and set a really bad precedent for us. But I think we all look at how do we combat climate change. There are some candidates who are looking at broad pictures and broad ways of doing those things. I look at it much like my campaign is much more grassroots level. So I think with climate change you need legislation, but you also need education, because you can put laws in place, but until you get people to understand what they mean for them on a regular basis, and how they can help contribute to reversing climate change before it's too late, is just as important.
Well, so we're going to come back to climate change because that is a huge subject. And interestingly, I did not get to watch the debate last night because it was on CNN, which many of us do not have. But I did watch Amy Goodman on Democracy Now! And got the highlights. And too late in the day, I went into the kitchen and to have a cup of tea before bed and turned the radio on, and it was on the radio. And I had not realized that, so that was getting near the end. So I just listened to a little bit, and I was so kind of teed off about the whole thing. So I thought, well, I'll just wait for Amy since I've missed most of it already. But before we get into then these issues that you are for or what you're against or whatever, let's find out a little bit about you, Steve.
Sure.
So.
We can start from the beginning. I was born at a very young age. Maybe we could start there. But I grew up in Connecticut. I went to school at George Washington University. I majored in political communications, and went to school, took my first job out of school.
Where's George Washington University?
It's in downtown Washington, D.C.
Oh, it's okay.
Yeah. And took my first job working for a political media company. And then after spending about 2 or 3 years doing that, I realized that, and I know this is going to sound strange, but politics really wasn't for me. It was a very dirty business in Washington, and it just didn't feel right. So at that time, I moved to North Carolina and came down here to start a business.
And how long ago was that?
That would have been 1994, so about 25 years ago.
Wow.
Yep.
Smart move.
Yeah, no, very. I think my best decision was marrying my wife, Susan. My second best was having the kids, and then the third best was probably moving to North Carolina. And came here to start a film and video business. Ran it for 10 years, and then got my MBA from UNC, right here in Chapel Hill. So I am a Tar Heel. I've worked at a number of different places since then. I'm currently the vice president of marketing for a company called Mutual Drug. What Mutual Drug is we work with independent pharmacies, really in North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia, and West Virginia.
Here, I want to emphasize that this is a cooperative.
It is a cooperative
Of independent pharmacies, and they're under so much pressure from the big boys.
You know your stuff. That's absolutely true.
Yeah, well,
Yep.
Carrboro Family Pharmacy is one of my favorite pharmacies, but my Medicare insurance does not have it as a preferred one, which really cuts down on things. So they're under a lot of threat constantly.
It is. So there's the issue of reimbursements right now from insurance companies.
Mm-hmm.
There's certainly the issue of Medicare and Medicaid.
Mm-hmm.
There's also something called DIR fees, which are being
And
imposed.
what is it?
DIR fees, which stand for direct and indirect remuneration. It's quite an issue that they're facing right now. And they're taking money away from the independent pharmacy, and so just as the mom and pop stores in town are disappearing, independent pharmacy is disappearing, and we are really fighting for their survival, because in a lot of places, and especially rural communities, the pharmacy, especially the independent pharmacy, is really a lot of people's only access to healthcare. And it's inexpensive healthcare for them.
Yeah.
So to be able to fight for those pharmacies is important. And to anybody that's listening, if you're going to a CVS or a Rite Aid or a Walgreens, get your prescription transferred to an independent pharmacy.
Yeah.
Because what happens is not only are you helping that business, but you're helping your community.
Yeah.
Because those people, they spend money in your community. When you spend money at a CVS, that money goes to shareholders on Wall Street.
Yeah.
And you've really, investing, and really, it requires no effort on your part, right? Because you can do the same thing in an independent pharmacy that you can do at a chain pharmacy.
And they're wonderful. Carrboro Family Pharmacy is wonderful. They deliver.
Yep.
And I live in 40 apartments of old folks,
Yeah.
seniors.
Yeah.
Senior sounds better, I guess.
There you go.
But sometimes, and some people don't drive anymore, and and if you're real sick,
Yeah.
it's wonderful to have that option that and they're over at our building sometimes once or twice a week delivering medicine, and it's such a beautiful thing that they do.
Well, the woman who now owns Carrboro Family Pharmacy, her name is Keiko, and her husband Mike, and they just bought that pharmacy from Benny Cutrell a year or so ago.
It's been so Benny left?
Yeah, so Benny left about a year or so ago. And Keiko's been running it, and she does a wonderful job with it. My mom goes to Carrboro Family Pharmacy.
Yeah, well, you know what, when my insurance did not, they give me a better price, but I don't go to CVS, I go to the clinic.
Mm-hmm.
I go to a federal clinic over on Lloyd Street, so I go to that pharmacy, yeah.
Yep, and before I get myself in too much trouble, I want to point out that right around the corner from us here
Is
is another independent pharmacy, also owned by Mutual Drug, or also works with Mutual Drug, called Tar Heel Town Pharmacy, and that's owned by Molly. And Molly is an excellent pharmacist as well, and we use both of them to try to split our loyalties. But
Yeah,
we're very
I thought it
fortunate.
was such an act of faith to open an independent pharmacy in this day and age, and I thought, good for her, and I wish her well.
Yep. So Carrboro Family Pharmacy's been there for 25 years, I think, maybe longer, and just wonderful people. So, you know, if you think your pharmacy is there just to pick up greeting cards and to pick up a bottle of pills, you know, you're wrong. They do so much more, and you know, can really counsel you not only on your health, but they actually go out of their way to help save you money on your medication as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Great people.
And always have the patience and time to discuss it with you and give you advice.
Absolutely.
It's really great.
Yeah, no, just wonderful people, and like I said, you know, they're local. They live here in Carborough. You know, so when you support those pharmacies, you're supporting Carborough.
Yeah.
And I mean, that really is the grassroots of, you know, shop local, buy local, grow local, and that's what we're doing, and we do it with, you know, with these pharmacies, you know, all over the 4 states that we service, and it's my role at the organization to go out and talk to these pharmacies and help them to become more well known in their communities and help people in those communities understand, you know, the value of the pharmacy, because, you know, a lot of things, you know, as in life, right? You take something for granted until it's gone.
Yeah.
Right. But the issue is if a pharmacy goes away, it's not coming back.
Yeah.
And you know, I mean, we can get into, you know, talking about, you know, how people are treating the environment, and they'll understand that, you know, once the last tree is gone, they won't be able to replace that either.
Yeah. Well, and it's just like with Weaver Street Market. You know, some people say, oh, well, you know, it's sort of like, in their mind, like Whole Foods. I said, no, it's not like Whole Foods.
It's not like Whole Foods.
You know, it's a whole different thing. Whole Foods money goes to a corporation.
Amazon, it goes to Amazon.
And now it's Amazon.
Yeah, now it goes to Amazon.
Now it's, which is a scary thought.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah.
So when you shop at Weaver Street Market, you know, I'm a member of that cooperative.
Me
you know,
too.
And you know, the money stays in the community, and it provides an awesome meeting place. In my opinion, they have the best bakery in town. You know, their breads and their cakes are just delicious. They make a great key lime pie too, by the way. Yeah, I mean, it's those sorts of businesses that we need to support. And you know, as we talk more, I can tell you some of the plans that I have for the businesses here in Carborough.
Yeah, and a lot of people, I don't think, realize the business end of it, that with a cooperative, like the money stays locally. A lot of people just don't, you know, we're not taught enough in school about how business models work.
That's right.
And how, but anyhow, well, I'm glad you're working for such a Carborough wonderful kind of business to be in, to
Thank
be
you.
supporting another cooperative, yeah.
So
Several cooperatives.
Several cooperatives for sure.
Yeah, yeah. So you moved to North Carolina 25 years ago
I did.
and lived in,
So I lived in Durham for about 10 years.
uh-huh,
And then we moved to Carborough when my kids were small, and they have since both graduated from school. So my oldest child is now in school at McAllister College, which is in St. Paul, Minnesota.
is where?
St. Paul, Minnesota.
Ah,
And they're a junior up there, and my son is a freshman at UNC. So we are now empty nesters for the first time.
so what are your kids?
So my oldest child is focused on political science and theater, and my youngest one, my son, he's just started school. I think he's looking at a psychology major, and then looking to get into Keenan Flagler to do a business major as well. So he'll do a double major there. And he plays hockey. He plays hockey for UNC, which he loves more than anything.
So you've lived in Carborough for 15 years, and is this your first venture into running for office?
This is absolutely my first foray into politics, and I gotta tell you, it's been really interesting. And you know, I mean, for example, like you and I never would have met if I hadn't been doing this. So it's been giving me like an awesome opportunity, you know, just to meet people, to see people in our community, you know, and really, like, you know, people want me to talk a lot, you know, talk about my views and talk about where we're going. But for me, it's really been a lot about listening to people.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that, you know, as a leader, like, you know, that's your job, is to listen to people and then execute their will.
Yeah.
You know, people don't put you into office so you can do what you want to do.
Yeah.
They put you in office so you can do what they want to do.
Yeah.
And that's the tack that I'm taking with that, is to, you know, is to be able to be a voice of the people. You know, I think a lot of Carborough is 6 square miles, and we have 21,000 people in Carborough, which makes Carborough, I don't know if you know this or not, the densest community, the densest city in North Carolina.
Wow.
Yep.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Well, no, not quite. We have a few minutes yet before we take it. We'll
Yeah.
take a station, I forgot to tell you that. We take a station break in the middle, that gives you a chance to catch your breath.
Okay, good.
And then we end about 5 of the hour.
Okay.
So just so you know that, I forgot to mention that too. So, so you've moved here, and this is, one of the things I was wondering about, I know there's so much money in politics, to run locally, I know for mayor of Raleigh, it's gotten ridiculously expensive. I didn't think Carborough got real expensive to run.
Well, it's funny you mention that. So, you know, so some numbers came out in the Daily Tar Heel, I think it was yesterday.
I gotta get the Tar Heel.
Yeah, you should. It's great, and now that we don't actually have
A
a Carborough
paper.
Citizen, right?
I've always,
Like, the Daily Tar Heel is sort of our de facto paper of record.
yeah.
So I read the Daily Tar Heel every
I
day.
get it every Wednesday when I come here,
Yeah.
and sometimes when I go over to Weaver Street Market, but yeah.
Yeah,
So-
well, if you're online, you can get it online too. So it's easy to get there, and they can email it to you.
So they had something.
But they had some information about the amount of money that people have raised, just in the Chapel Hill Carborough races, and it varied. So, you know, like our mayor, who's running unopposed, raised, you know, under $1,000. I think she's just raised a few $100s. Some of the other Carborough aldermen, it was reported that they'd raised close to $6,000 to run for alderman. And then there's a gentleman in Chapel Hill who's running for town council, and I think I saw he had raised over $10,000. So, you know, my campaign hasn't raised nearly that much, and we're running pretty lean. My campaign has really been a grassroots campaign. It hasn't been about organizations. It hasn't been about endorsements. It hasn't been about, you know, larger groups. It's literally been about going neighborhood to neighborhood, and just talking to people and trying to be the voice for the neighborhoods, because a lot of the neighborhoods feel like they're not represented in downtown Carborough. They feel that their voices aren't being heard, and that's one of the reasons that I'm running, is to bring a voice to the neighborhoods, and to try to actively, not passively, but actively reach out to them to bring their views and thoughts and opinions into the town. Because, as I mentioned, in the end, you know, we're just representative of the people in Carborough.
So you have not raised a lot of money then?
I haven't. I've raised a couple $1,000s, and it's pretty much just paid for, you know, some flyers and some
Yeah.
yard signs and things like that.
Yeah.
But you know, we're not doing a lot of events. We're not, you know, so when I say it's grassroots, like, I'm not kidding. So
Yeah,
like
yeah.
we have, so I do this thing called rucking, RUCKING, which is where you put a 30 or 35 pound weight on your back and you go for a walk, and it's a way to get exercise, and it's almost as good as running, but it's much better on your knees. And there's a lot of my friends do that as well. And so what we've done is we have organized a group, and we are literally walking every street in Carborough to try and get the message out.
And your 35-pound pack will have a lot of
The
flyers
35-pound pack has a lot of flyers in it. Well,
to leave with people.
well, it's 35 pounds plus the weight of the flyers, and And we're getting out there and we're literally going door to door and just putting a flyer on people's door just to let them know, who we are and why we're running, and and really trying to make it a campaign for the people, the people of Scarborough.
That's great.
Um,
That's really good to hear, because I hope that our municipal elections stay in that price range, very low key.
yeah,
Because once you need a lot of money, then you owe a lot of favors.
that's exactly right. And I've been very transparent in terms of what I believe and what I don't believe.
Yeah.
And and I know that has tipped a lot of people off. But it's also gotten a lot of people who said, I appreciate your candor and I appreciate your honesty. And so, if I hope it works out for me, and I hope to be able to serve the people of Scarborough,
Well, good for you. Win or lose, you're having a very interesting experience.
I'm having a
And-
very interesting experience.
Yeah, and you're keeping your weight down.
I hope so.
Yeah. Okay, I think we are going to have a station break now.
This is Wolf's Wake Up Call on WCOM LP, Chapel Hill in Carrboro, 103.5 FM. You can stream us live at WCOMFM.org.
Okay, Iris, I have about one announcement. Do you have any announcements? You haven't, no? Okay, well, the one thing I want to say, which is not something for us to go to, but I just got an email from one of our Raging Granny and Liv Sisters, Liv Hutchby, that the federal agency, the Federal Energy Regulatory Agency, has ordered a halt to the natural gas, the mountain pipeline construction. So just keep an eye out for the paper, if you can get a paper these days, or go online and find out more about that, because she said she's afraid to get too excited, but that's a hopeful piece of news, and we need all the hope we can get these days. The big thing on Friday is the Flock Views boycott. And Flock is the Farm Labor Organizing Committee, and they're boycotting Views e-cigarettes. And each month we've been going to different Circle K where they have gas and cigarettes, all the civilized things that keep things going, I guess. And the reason they're doing that is because a lot of young people are smoking the flavored ones, but also it's one of their most best-selling cigarettes, and they're really pushing them. And it's Reynolds Tobacco, and the whole point is to get Reynolds Tobacco to pay the farm workers a fairer wage. And this is one way to get to them to affect their pocketbook. So be aware that anytime you go to any store to get Views cigarettes or vape, whatever it is, let them know that you don't get it, boycott it. Let them know you're doing that. And that's going to be October 18th, this Friday, in Durham, at the particular Circle K that is at the corner of Carver Street and Guest Road. And it's a really nice time. It's going to be at 12:30, not too early and not too late. I like that a lot. 12:30, the Raging Grannies are going. And what's really important with this one, the National Lawyers Guild is going to support us, and they're coming, or we're supporting them. It's going to be good. The Raging Grannies, the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom, Flock, the Farm Labor Organizing Committee, and I'm sure there's some others. And now the National Lawyers Guild, who are having a convention in Durham, are going to join us. So that's going to be very interesting and exciting on Friday, 12:30 on Guest Road and Carver Street in Durham. And I also just wanted to mention, it's still a little early, but the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom is supporting the 40th anniversary of the Greensboro massacre that happened in 1979. And there's going to be a lot of things online if you want to look it up to find out what happened. We've had a program a few weeks ago with Lucy Lewis on telling us about it, and so I just want to mention that it's going to be in Greensboro, 3 days of activities for that, November 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, and it's going to be everything from a play to some talks. There'll be a panel. There'll be all kinds of things happening that will be interesting and inspiring, and so it'll be Friday night, and then all day Saturday, and then Sunday will be some faith-based activities. So mark your calendar for that. That'll be coming up beginning of November, which comes up really fast these days.
2 weeks.
Yes. So we have a guest. I want to get back to our guest, Steve Friedman, who's running for the Board of Aldermen in Carborough. He's lived in North Carolina for 25 years
I have.
and gone to school here, and he's been in Carborough for 15 years.
That's right.
So I think he,
You have a good memory.
not too bad, at times. And he's telling us about the way he's running the grassroots campaign and telling us about himself. And so the next thing I wanted to ask you is, it's not easy to get up and pull this together and get your head together. Should I do this or not? How does my so what is compelling you to do it, and what do you feel you can bring to Carborough? Maybe that's not happening now. What is it?
Sure. That's a great question, Lori. And there's a lot there. So my initial reason for wanting to run sort of relates back to what you said initially, that all politics are local. And if you don't like the way things are going nationally, you should act locally. And I don't like the way things are going nationally. It's abhorrent what we're seeing, and you could begin the list. I couldn't even begin to tell you. I mean, I could, but how many things have turned in the last 2 to 3 years, between putting children in cages and the rollbacks of the EPA issues, and the pulling out of Syria, leaving the Kurds unprotected. What's happened in Charlottesville, the rise of the alt-right and the white nationalism.
Terrifying.
Terrifying, right? All these things that are happening that are just, I'm 52 years old. I've never seen anything like this in my lifetime, and it's something that needs to be addressed, and we need to stop. So the decision was made to act locally.
Pardon?
So the decision was made to act locally, and to try to become a bigger voice, and try to lend my skills and my expertise to the Board of Aldermen. I bring some unique skill sets to the board, which I don't think they have right now. I've been a small business owner for a number of years. I got my MBA from Carolina, and I've been focused on business in my community for a long time. And so I think that having that perspective and being able to manage our finances, being able to strategically develop a plan for Carborough is a skill set that I'll be able to bring to the board. In politics, you try to make it easy for people to remember, things about you, and I've sort of come up with 3, and I call them my 3 C's, which are community, commerce, and consensus. And I'll run through the 3 of them quickly for you. So
CCC.
CCC. So you can try, so let me start with the baseline of, I think everybody who's running is very concerned about the environment. and very concerned about how does Carborough impact climate change and how can we help to lessen that impact. I think everybody who is running is very much concerned about racial equity and how do we keep Carborough inclusive and open to everybody. So as we look at what we want to do, you know, we look at it through the lens of those things. But the first thing is certainly community and how we communicate with our communities. So I'm in marketing. I spend my days communicating with 550 independent pharmacies throughout the Southeast, each of whom like to be talked to and communicated with in different ways. Some people like text, some people like email, some people like phone, some people like fax, some people like hard copies mailed to them. They all want to be communicated in different ways. They also have different interests. You know, I could get into, some people are interested in prescriptions, some people are interested in OTC, some people are interested in point of care clinics. So there's a broad range of things that those people are interested in. It's the same in Carborough. You have people who want to be communicated to in a lot of different ways and for different reasons. Some people want to get something in their mailbox that they can get and they'll notice. Some people want to be able to read something in their email and then file it away. Some people want to read on their phone a text and get it that way. And also, not everybody cares about everything that's going on in Carborough. You know, if you live down in the South End where I do, you may not care about what's happening up in the neighborhoods near Lake Hogan Farms, or if you live downtown, you may not care about a road widening, not where you are, but you do care about bike safety and bike paths. So everybody has different ways that they want to be communicated with. Everybody has different interests. So there's a way to do that that's not being done right now, so that we can frequently and actively reach out to the community to try to engage them in what's going on in town hall and try to give them the opportunity to have a voice. Now, if you don't care what happens in town hall and this is not of interest to you, that's fine, right? You've got people in charge who do. But if you do, you shouldn't have to proactively go out and seek that information. The board and town hall should really do the work of getting that information to you. As we mentioned, there's no Carborough Citizen anymore. There's no newspaper of record here in town.
Yeah, so
right? So we have to take up that mantle and be that voice that lets the town know here's what's going on, and if you're interested, please come down and give your opinion. In 4 years, when if I'm lucky enough to serve, I hope that there's more than 5 or 6 people running for Carborough Alderman. I hope there's 10 or 11 people running for Carborough Alderman. And if there are, I'm going to step aside, because I want more people to have an active role in the government. I want to see more people on advisory boards. I want to see more people coming down and speaking to the Board of Aldermen. And I want to see more people voting. And the only way to do that is to inform the electorate.
So you're talking about, you think that there's been insufficient outreach?
I do.
Okay. And especially now that we don't have a newspaper, I sure wish that somebody in Carborough, when they started the Carborough Courier, that's when the News and Observer had a whole Chapel Hill. They had competition,
Mm-hmm.
and then once they folded, these others have been folding out, fading out.
Yep.
And so now we don't have anything.
Right.
You can go online, there's a Carborough, is it the Courier or something is online, but it has very limited, it has some few basics and one of the things I didn't mention, I gotta
Sure.
mention, the poetry.
The Poetry Festival's coming up.
West End Poetry Festival, we had 2 poets on last week, and that is starting tonight at Johnny's Sporting Goods, right down on West Main Street.
Johnny's Gone Fishing.
Johnny's Gone Fishing, I'm not used to that new name. Johnny Gone Fishing. And then tomorrow night it's gonna be at the Cat's Cradle in the back. And then Friday night I think it's gonna be at Flyleaf. and then Saturday it's gonna be Saturday afternoon. All the others are at 6:30, Saturday afternoon, I think around 1 o'clock at the Century Center. I just had to get that
Fair
in.
enough, fair enough.
Had to get that
That's a
in.
good one.
That's important, because but without a newspaper, it's really hard.
It's really hard, and the town does a great job of letting me know when my trash pickup is changing. They'll put out yard signs, and that gets communicated. But if they're widening my road, or they're looking at putting in a path, or there's something going on at town hall that we should know about,
Yeah,
we don't hear about it.
yeah.
You know.
No, we don't. So, and so I think the Tar Heel is the next best thing.
Mhm.
I get the News and Observer, but that is primarily Wake County
We can.
and Raleigh,
Yep.
with a little bit of state news and rarely a little blurb if something bad happens in Chapel Hill or something.
Yeah.
But very little about Chapel Hill or Carborough, except the restaurants. They do push the restaurants a few times a week. So anyhow, yeah, so that's a big
Yeah,
issue.
so community and communication is one. The second is commerce. So Carborough, and you know, you can look around. Carborough's main business is restaurants and retail. You know that, and some entertainment venues. I couldn't short the Cat's Cradle, which is really a gem here that we have in town. But if you look at the history in North Carolina, if you look down east, we had tobacco, and if you look out west, we had furniture and textiles. A lot of those towns that were built up around those industries, when those industries died, so did those towns, and a lot of those towns would love to have the problems that we're having now. And so, if you look at that as a bellwether for Carborough, we've got to do something about our economic development. Right now, 90% of the tax base in Carborough comes from the residents, and only 10% comes from the businesses. And so we've got to help broaden our business base. And the way that we do that is not by bringing in more restaurants and retail, but by bringing in businesses that complement those. So if you think about service businesses, technology businesses, professional businesses, those are businesses that pay great wages, that would contribute greatly to our tax base. But most importantly, those businesses don't compete with the businesses that are here. They actually support the businesses that are here. Because those
So you're saying what, technology?
technology, service businesses,
Like
and
what would serve?
so like a law firm or an accounting firm,
Okay.
or a consulting firm,
Yeah.
a business that sells hours, an advertising firm,
Yeah.
Firms that sell service,
Okay.
and those types of businesses, they don't compete with the businesses that are here,
Mhm.
right? And they bring people in from elsewhere to work in Carborough. And so what that does is, they need to go out to lunch, so they'll go over to Weaver Street to eat lunch, or they need to go pick up something before they go home, so they'll stop at Fitch's on their way home, or they need to, pick up dry cleaning, or whatever it is that they need, they'll be able to find that here in Carborough. The other great thing is that the Chapel Hill Carborough Chamber of Commerce did an event about 2 or 3 weeks ago. It was a fascinating event. It was called the State of the Community, and they released about 400 PowerPoint slides, just chock full of data about everything that's going on in our community. And one of the things that really stood out to me was that every day in Carborough, you have about 9,000 people who leave our town to go work elsewhere, while you have only 3,000 people who come into Carborough to work, which means that there is a highly educated, motivated workforce here in Carborough. If we can give them a place to work in town, we can help cut down on car miles, we can help cut down on pollution. They'll be able to take the bus, they'll be able to bike, they'll be able to walk, and people will truly be able to work where they live. And there's a lot to be said for that, providing them that opportunity. So that's why commerce is really important for me.
I guess you know that many years ago when Ellie Kinnaird was the mayor, she was really very effective in bringing. They had a small business fund, so they helped start up businesses and could lend them some money. That's how they got Weaver Street Market here, which has been a great business and a great draw for many people here. They started the farmers, it was a small farmers
Yeah.
market. They gave support and built the sheds or, roofs so that
Mhm.
there was a place for them. So there was a big surge with her.
Yeah.
But you're right, there's not been much since then that
Yeah.
I can speak to.
Yeah, and if I could maybe just go off on a tangent for that for 1 second. So, one of the things I failed to mention that is also a big issue that's facing us here in Carrboro is the issue of affordable housing. I think it's an issue that's broadly across Orange County, but it's really very well pronounced here in Carrboro. And there's
And that's relatively new here.
yeah, oh yeah,
It's not
Yep.
that long ago. I mean, but I'm old,
yeah.
so maybe 15, 20 years. I mean,
Yeah,
this is
it's been going on. It's been going on for a little while, but
Yeah.
one of the things, so there's a lot of ideas about how to address the issue, right? And if it was easy, it would be done already. Because
absolutely.
right, because I think that the board that we have, in town, we've got nothing but smart people on that board, and they're very focused on making, Carrboro a better place for everybody to live. But one of the ways that we can help to combat affordable housing is to have people in town get paid a living wage. And if people in town are paid a living wage, and those businesses that I mentioned, those technology businesses and those services businesses, they pay very well. And so what you're able to do is you're able to have people who live here in town, have those jobs and be able to live here. And then also, by creating that increased revenue, you're able to expand the tax base, which will then be able to, provide that housing for people that need it. I think, through, I talk about, going through this campaign, all the people I've had a chance to meet. Well, I've had a great chance to meet, some of the policemen and some of the teachers and some of the other public service workers that we have in town, and they don't live in Carrboro because they can't afford to. And so, if and when we can, develop this fund, I would like to direct some of those to the people that actually serve the town, because it's a travesty that you work for a town that you can't afford to live in.
It's and that's happening, in a lot of places now, especially Chapel of Carrboro, but I'm sure Raleigh's getting people are getting priced out, and somehow there's got to be some way to stem that race to make so much money to developers that they don't want to touch things that won't make them a bundle.
Right. Well, and then and it's a double-edged sword too, right? Because it's a basic economics issue that if you increase the supply, you can help to meet the demand. But if the supply of housing comes down, if you don't do the development, then the demand continues to rise, prices will continue to rise. And so, in addition to creating that greater tax base, which will really, and I think fairly, tax the businesses that are here that earn their money while they're here, it'll help to alleviate the tax base that is on the residents right now. So, as you're probably aware, the town passed a 1.5 tax increase over 3 years. It's going to be half a point every 3 years on the residents, with the goal of having that money pay for affordable housing. And I agree with what they did. I mean, I think that it's at the crisis stage where you need to have that money there, but it's not a sustainable solution. It's not something that you can't continue to raise taxes in order to pay for housing. You wind up just chasing your tail.
Yeah.
And so, so you've got to come up with other revenue opportunities to help cover those costs.
Well, one of the things in this country, there's a tremendous shortage of housing all over the country, and all the housing that's going up is unaffordable to most people,
That is true.
except the quite well-to-do. And I never used to see homeless people on the streets.
In Carrboro.
Well, anywhere. You didn't used to ever see that.
Yeah.
You'd be a few, there'd maybe be a few, somebody with an alcohol problem. At the tail end of the Depression, there was what they called hobos. There was a few. But this is, I think in the last, 30 years or so, it's a relatively new, and now it's mothers and children. Now, how many, I've heard something and I forget the statistic, but we have kids going to school who are homeless.
Yep.
We have students going to college who are homeless.
Yep.
And what kind of a country is this?
Yeah.
You know, and it's not an easy, you're right, if it was easy to fix, because we're a capitalist society, and people have the right to make as much money as they can.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as that's going on, people are gonna do it. So if we're gonna talk about the national thing, I mean, I'm very much want some kind of a revolution in our whole economic system.
There has to be.
Because
Because-
eventually has to be. But right now, we're talking about you
Sure.
running for alderman of
Right.
Carver,
Okay,
who
well,
can't do
okay.
all, but
I can't do it all, but I do want to put in a shameless plug for a couple things.
okay, please.
So as we're talking about women and children, so there's a great organization here in Chapel Hill called the Compass Center, and the Compass Center helps primarily women and children, a lot of whom are victims of domestic violence, and they are having an event tomorrow night at the Botanical Gardens called A Passion for Purple, because
And where is it gonna be?
at the Botanical Gardens.
Botanical Garden.
Yeah,
okay.
it's from 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock, and I would encourage people to attend. And if you can't attend, please go to their website, see what they do. They are, it's crazy because there is no public service for this. So they're a private organization. They're reliant on grants and donations, and the amount of service that they give to our community is just outstanding. And really, they, when I talk about giving a voice to people, like I'm giving a voice to people that are already here, but they are the voice of people who, are underserved, who are really in times of stress and distress, and need support. And the people who work there are wonderful people. They do outstanding work and really should, be commended. So if you can, November is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. It's also National Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Please be aware of this organization in your community. And if you are in need of their services, please reach out to them.
So this fundraiser is gonna be tomorrow night
Tomorrow night.
at the Botanical Garden from 6 to 8. And do you have for the Compass Center, I guess you would just go to compasscenter.org.
It's Compass, you're putting me on the spot with the website. I think if you just Google Compass Center,
Yeah,
it'll come up.
it'll
And then
come
click
up.
it, and then.
In Chapel Hill.
Yeah,
Compass Center in
Chapel Hill. Yep.
And because we had Cordelia
Yep,
on
Cornelius,
some months ago, and just think so highly.
as do I, as do I.
And those services are, so I mean, that's another group of the people who need someone to speak up for them when they're in so much distress, they're just barely hanging on.
It is somebody speaking up for the powerless.
Yeah, for the powerless, absolutely.
And they do that in a really meaningful way through a number of different methods, and everything from legal advocacy to financial education to helping with just regular education, settling basic life skills.
So Steve, I just looked at the clock over your
Uh-oh.
shoulder here, and I see we have about 1 more minute. So I like everything you were saying.
Thank you.
Yeah, and but I don't think didn't get to, we did the
The third C.
the third C.
Okay, so you have
Communication.
communication, community. You have commerce, and then you have consensus.
Oh, consensus. I
Yeah.
thought it was community.
Yeah.
Okay, consensus.
And so consensus is basically, people are always talking about how it takes so long to get something done, especially when you're in the government. And coming from a business background, we can't take the time to deliberate and talk and drag things out. We are measured by the work that we get done. And so to be able to do that, you've got to bring a group with very disparate opinions into alignment to move forward towards a shared common goal. So people come, the same way that people come to the board with different viewpoints and different ways of attacking a problem, people do that in business as well. But what I'm able to do, and what I hope to be able to do for the board, is to help to take those opinions and sort of act as a facilitator to help move some of those things forward so that we can act quickly on ideas and make decisions more quickly that will be most impactful for the residents of Carver.
Well,
Did I get that in a minute?
Yeah,
Or close.
so if people want to get in touch with you,
If they want to get in touch with me, go to my website. It's carboroughsteve.com.
oh, Carborough Steve, okay.
carboroughsteve.com. You probably see my signs around town. You can follow me on Facebook at Carborough Steve, or follow me on Twitter at Carborough Steve. You can always
So it's all easy. It's all Carborough Steve. Just
Hey,
remember
I'm in
that.
marketing. It's all about branding, right?
Yeah.
You've got to give people something that they easily remember.
Something easy and quick
Yeah.
and memorable.
carboroughsteve@gmail.com.
Well, Steve, it's been great to meet
It's
you.
been great to meet you too, Lori. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for having me.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for the time. This is,
Yeah.
you know, we could talk for another hour. Here
Yeah,
I was
we
worried about
could.
it, right?
We could. And try to solve the problems of not only of Carver, but
Well-
the whole world.
Well, if we could do that in an hour, I'll stay.
Okay. Thanks.